Welcome to Gentex Multimedia, streaming live to your device from beautiful Brisbane. Today we have got lots of updates coming to you. The Premier and our Chief Health Officer will be joining soon with all the updates. And don't forget that today we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra. That and much more right after we have the weather update with Dilraj Dillon.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 29 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with a slight chance of a shower. Wind southeasterly 15 to 20 km per hour, tending easterly 15 to 25 km per hour and then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 4 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 13, that is extreme. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
And thank you very much for that update, Dilraj. Well, right now, moving on, as I mentioned, that today we have lots to talk about and there's so much that's happening out there. Well, first of all, let's take a look at the update from Premier from yesterday. But she will be bringing, a fresh update is coming up your way very soon.
I just want to say how personally grateful and proud I am of the work that everybody has been doing during the lockdown and now post-lockdown. It's great to see. Obviously it was crowded crossing some of the streets today and people had their masks on. So once again, if you're in doubt, wear your mask. And of course, don't leave home without it, especially in that greater Brisbane region. Just put it in your pocket or your handbag as you walk out that front door and have it with you. And if you are feeling compromised at any stage, put that mask on.
The response here in Greater Brisbane, I think, was absolutely brilliant. I went out, people were wearing masks, people were socially distancing, people weren't going out. It was fantastic, and that happened immediately. It's really important that anyone who has any symptoms anywhere in the state, no matter how mild, immediately comes forward and gets tested.
And that message is very important, that anyone who has got any symptoms, no matter how mild that might be, that it is very important that you get tested. Well, right now, as I mentioned before, that today we'll bring to you the update on real estate. So, right now, let's go into the real estate update with Usha Chandra of Globenet Realty. It's time now for real estate update with Usha Chandra of Globenet Realty.
329,000, and the number of units sold in the combined cities was 2,245, and the median price was 561,768. So if you
And that's quite an amazing update there. So, when we look at all the things in real estate, let's talk all about what's happening in your office first. And once again, welcome to this show, Usha.
Thank you for having me on your show, and this is the second show for 2021.
Isn't that wonderful? Already, halfway into January.
Yes, definitely. January is going on very quickly. Though we are in the pandemic season, it's going very quickly as well. Okay,
so the office has now been open. You're back in the swing of things. So what's been happening? What's the report from your office? So what has been the activities so far?
Yeah, definitely the office opened last week for a few days, and then we had to close the office. So in the last few days while we were open, the activity was quite high. We are centrally located, as you know, on a busy Sandgate Road. We had a lot of walk-in clients as well. Last year we sold quite a few properties, which was at the end of the before we closed the office, and they're all unconditional and sold. The finance are all approved. And we have just listed 2 new properties this week, and that shows the market is on the move again. Definitely there's a lot of buyer inquiries. We had number of inquiries on the properties which are already sold, and we are looking for new properties to satisfy the buyers who are waiting on our database.
Okay, so, being back and having 2 listings already, and what about, other activities like settlements, etc.?
Definitely, we had one settlement yesterday, which was the buyer was a young buyer and extremely happy when he picked up his key and a little gift from us. So yeah, the activities are really high. First settlement for 2021 happened only yesterday.
And isn't that wonderful? It's very good to see that that kind of activity is already happening while you have just opened, the office. So what about in the rental section? Because while the office is closed, there would be a backlog of things. So what's happening in the rental section?
Yeah, definitely. The rental section is extremely busy. Our property managers and the assistant property managers have been extremely busy following up the arrears. As you know, when the office is closed for over 2 weeks, there's a lot of tenants who haven't paid the rent. So it's a lot of follow-up system. Now we have got our arrears back on track. The girls have done extremely hard work to make those things happen, and we are back on track now. Our rental demands are quite high. We didn't have any vacancies before we closed the office. Now we have got 2 new properties in rental as well. So the girls are extremely busy and they are doing amazing work. I know that after coming back from holidays, you need another holiday to recover. So yeah, they're back on track and smiling and working and whinging at times as well.
Okay, so back at work and everything's happening. So what happens during the holiday period, in terms of tenants, while we're talking about, say, rentals, because I understand that your office has a no cash policy, so people would have been paying rent online, or how does that work?
Yeah, all our tenants, not all our tenants, but 99.9% of our tenants are on direct debit, so the money comes from their account to our account, and then we disperse it to the owners mid and end of month. So our mid-month was only yesterday, and extremely busy day for our property managers. We are doing exceptionally well for the start of the year.
Okay, looks like you are to a flying start of this year. So you have had settlements, you have got listings, and you have already processed the mid-month, and of course you have catching up with the arrears and maintenance. So that's been a busy period.
Extremely busy period, and maintenance was not that high. We take a couple of maintenance while we were still on holidays. Vicky and I managed it fairly well. So maintenance is quite low actually, considering last year during Christmas time we get a lot of storms. The last year was pretty good, so we didn't have too many complaints about any maintenance issues. There were minor maintenance issues, and we sorted it out while we were on holidays.
And that is wonderful that these days with online reporting and online forms, people can lodge in the repair request and things are done. So that is wonderful that it's all under control. Normally, traditionally, in this period, we found that coming back there would be a backlog, and property managers would be tearing their hair apart trying to get on top of things. And now it's wonderful to see that with systems in place, the people are actually on top of things. Now, one of the things that happens traditionally around this time is, even though people are on a lease, that around this time there's 2 things that happens in the beginning of the year. People sometimes change jobs, but also there's a lot of break leases and people are starting to move. Have you seen that happen this year?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two of our properties where the tenants are breaking lease. Actually, one has bought a property, and the other one has moved to up North Queensland. So they're both break leases, and one of them, Vicky, has already found a tenant, so which is really extremely good news for those tenants. Otherwise, as you know, if tenants are breaking their lease, they have to continue paying the rent till we find a tenant, and there's a break lease cost of 1 week's rent plus GST plus marketing cost. So these tenants are extremely happy. Vicky has already found a tenant for them.
Okay, so that's wonderful to see that, the office has been busy and active and been very, very, very productive. Well, that's the update from your office. Well, right now, moving on, let's look at some of the broader issues. Some of the reports. So first up, I'd like to know what's happening in capital cities. What are the value changes? What's been, if we could give us an update on that scenario.
Yeah, definitely. The Sydney market has the monthly change was 0.4% only, and the 12-month change was 2.3%, whereas Melbourne was 0.7% was monthly change, and the 12-month change was minus 1.7%. Brisbane was 0.9% on a monthly changes, and the 12-month change was 3.7%. Adelaide was 0.7%, and the monthly 12-month change was 5.9%, and Perth was 0.8%, and the yearly or 12-month change was 2.3%. 5 combined capital cities, the annual change of the 12-month change was 1.5%.
That is wonderful. I mean, when you look at the average change on the month was only 0.6%, but overall for the 12 month it was 1.5%. So, I mean, still there's a growth. I mean, it's not great, but even then it's not bad. Well, right, moving on, of course, we know the heart and soul of real estate is the number of listings. So, could you give us an update on the broader or the national scale of the listings and how they are going?
Absolutely. The listing is the main thing. If you don't have any listings, you can't make any money, and you don't have anything to sell. So listings is the main thing for real estate agency. Looking at the capital cities, Sydney had 1,582 listings, and the new listings, and the 12-month listing was minus 11.7%. The total number of listing was 12,932, so it has declined there. Melbourne was number of new listings was 2,811, and the 12-month change was 55%, and total number of listing was 19,737, and that was the percentage was 13.8%. Brisbane was 1,679 new listings. It was by minus 5% actually, 6.1%, sorry, and 13,618 total listings, and it was minus 28.4%. Adelaide was 690 listings, minus 9.3%. Total number of listing was 4,679, which was minus 36.8%. Adelaide was 1,761, 12% the monthly change, the 12 monthly change, sorry, and 12,425 total listings, and it was minus 30.2%. Hobart was 136 listings, minus 24.4%. The total listings was 636 and minus 28.3%. Darwin was only 65 listings. People must be struggling in Darwin actually. 588 total number of listings, minus 42.8%. Canberra was 169 listings. The total listings for the year was 1,202, minus 39.5%. Combined capitals, total listings, new listings was 8,893. It was 10.9%, and 65,817 properties were listed, and it was minus 17.8%. So that shows the total listings for the capital cities.
Well, it is very, very interesting to note all the figures that you have just quoted there. When you look at Darwin, as you mentioned, only 65 listings, and that's down to minus 42.8%. And then you compare that with Melbourne, which is the only one which is in the plus, 13.8%. So what it means is that a lot of houses on the market in Melbourne and not, very few in Darwin. So what does that indicate to the buyers that, where is the place to buy at this point in time? Looking at those two, the highest to the lowest, meaning the 13.8%, which is a plus, and minus 42% in Darwin.
Of course, in Darwin, the rental rates will be very high. If people are buying for investment properties, there's always this supply and demand situation, and there the supply is very limited, and the demand will be quite high for investors and the renters to rent the property. So obviously, the market is pretty good over there, and then the Brisbane market is still very good, compared to other places. I would rather invest in Brisbane than anywhere else in the world.
Well, one of the rules of real estate, real estate is, agents talk a slightly different the language to investors. So, an astute investor would run the opposite direction to the direction in which everyone else is running. So Darwin is peaked. Of course, it will get very good rentals or rental returns. Prices will be very high because there's only limited number of listings. Melbourne, by the other way, will have a flood of listings, and that's due to multiple reasons. So, to buy at the lower end of the market, now would be the time to buy in Melbourne and just wait on it to grow. Well, that's just my 2 cents worth.
Exactly. I was telling my brother the other day, invest in Melbourne because the prices are very low.
Yeah, well, of course, Brisbane has been steady. Well, right now, moving on, if you look at the number of sales then, which is the private treaty, if you could give us 2 comparisons, maybe first if you talk about the houses, and of course, these days people are investing in a lot of units as well. So if you could cover units as well, that would be wonderful.
Yes, the capital city is actually Sydney. Total number of sales was 1,388, and the median price was 833,000. Melbourne was 1,709, and the median price was 710. So that shows that the Melbourne price has gone down from the last quarter. Brisbane market is still steady, the same similar price, 757 properties, and median price is 520. Adelaide is 329 number of sales, and 495,000 is the median price. Perth is 766 sales, and median price is 472,500. Hobart is 137 sales, 590,000. Hobart prices have gone a little bit high. Darwin is 20 sales. You can see that only 20 sales happen, and the median price there is quite high, is $567,500. Canberra is only 62 sales, and $772,250 is the median price. Obviously, if you compare in the last quarter, Canberra and Melbourne prices were very similar, and now we can see that Canberra price has gone much higher than Melbourne prices in houses. Whereas compared to units, number of units sold in Sydney was 785 units, and prices are quite steady there, 649,000, and Melbourne was 838 number of sales in units, and townhouses 587,250 was the median price. Brisbane is 206 units in townhouses, and 415,750 is the average price. Adelaide market is 58 townhouses or apartments, 341,000 is the average price. Perth is 221, there's quite a large number this time. $395,000 was the median price. Hobart was only 34 townhouses, apartments, 429,750, and Darwin is only 7. Look at the number of units. It's not applicable at all, the median price. And Canberra was 96, and median price is 522,650. So the combined capitals was total number of sales was 5,168. Median prices for houses was 663,329,000, and the number of units sold in the combined cities was 2,245, and the median price was 561,768. So if you look at combined capital cities, between the prices of the houses and the apartments or units, it's not a major difference. It's only $100,000 difference between buying a house where houses have got land and units have got body corporate and all the other fees as well. So the better investment is always the houses.
Yeah, of course, houses always make sound investment. But as you mentioned, we were looking at Darwin. If you look at the unit sales, they could not even work out a median price because of the, but that's only been 7 sold compared to the 20 houses that sold there. So that goes to show that, there's people are holding all, they're not coming on the market, but demand is there. People are, all of a sudden discovering Darwin, and everyone's going up north. And so the demand there is pretty high. It will be, whether that will be sustainable or not moving into the future would be something to watch out for. And Melbourne, 1,700, houses sold there in 838 units. That's quite interesting to see how things are going. So when you look at everything's in this factual sheet, in a factual manner, you can get a better picture of what's actually happening nationally.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just concerned about the Darwin real estate agents. What will they be doing? I mean, obviously they haven't got too many properties, or not many people are investing in there. So obviously they must be looking for other jobs as well.
Well, I mean, there's always a different perspective because, when you are an investor, you look at a different perspective. If you're a real estate agent, you look at a slightly different perspective as well. And of course, if you are a banker, you'd look at a slightly different perspective as well. But that's one way to look at it. If you're looking at farming, if you're looking at real estate agency, or if you're looking yourself as a salesperson, trying to place yourself within the market, this information is very vital to say where would you go. But the crystal ball, if someone had one, would be slightly different because, you need to know this is what's happening there now, what's going to happen in the future. As we know, if we can gauge that, then we're going. Well, thank you very much for a very interesting session today, Usha. Thank you very much. And is there anything that you'd like to say in conclusion before we finish off today's segment?
Yes, definitely. I would like to wish everybody a very successful 2021, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very, very informative session there today with Usha Chandra of Globenet Realty. Well, right now, we'll move on to the update from Queensland Government for today. Yes, we are ready. Yep.
Sorry about that. I just had a very quick back where I thought my microphone had just
Have
Ready to roll. Still in Indian radio. Yes, we are connected.
All right, good morning, Queensland. So, in some good news overnight, we only have 2 new cases, and both of these are in hotel quarantine, so we're not worried about these cases. We have 26 active cases, and look, phenomenally, over the last 24 hours, we have had 20,615 tests done. So, once again, congratulations to everyone who's been coming out and getting tested. And if you have any symptoms, make sure that you do that. So everything we've done in the past 6 days is because of the arrival of the highly infectious UK strain of COVID. Not much is known about it except that it is highly, highly infectious, and of course we are learning more and more about it every single day. Now, we had some genomic testing that came back late last night, and Dr Young will go through that in more detail, but the genomic testing has now linked 6 cases of the highly infectious UK variant of COVID. These are the UK traveller and his partner, the hotel cleaner and her partner, and the man and his daughter from Lebanon who we told you about yesterday. So all 6 have a connection to the Grand Chancellor Hotel, and at this stage we want to also say that the Grand Chancellor has not had any issues by taking COVID people since September, and they've cooperated entirely with the health authorities, but we are now concerned about this cluster. So both groups of these overseas arrivals stayed on the same floor of the hotel at different times, but not in neighbouring rooms. So there is no need for the public to be concerned, but we are going to take some immediate actions as a precaution. And Dr Young will go through these in a bit more detail, but I'll give an overview. So as a precaution beginning immediately, so all these plans were set in place last night. I want to thank Health and Police. People worked through the night to make sure that this was ready to go this morning. The remaining 129 guests are going to be moved to other hotels and they will be tested. They will not be charged for their time at the Grand Chancellor or in the hotels that they are going to be moved to. 226 people who worked in the hotel since December 30 are going to be contacted and they will go into quarantine and get tested. Once again, precautionary. 250 quarantine guests who have left the hotel since December 30 are now currently being contacted. They will be quarantined and they will be tested. Once again, precautionary. No more guests have gone into the hotel since the variant was discovered on January the 7th. So as you can see, everybody is cooperating, everyone is doing the right thing. The investigation is ongoing. But what we are seeing is that this UK variant is unknown. Dr Young will be briefing AHPPC, and I plan to communicate with my state and federal counterparts after this press conference as well. I think we need to immediately look at the way in which we are handling people coming into the country, international arrivals, and also to looking at the quarantine hotels that they are going into. Of course, we have to put in additional precautions, and we are doing that immediately. But what we are dealing with here is something that we've never had to deal with before. When we were dealing with the COVID, we knew what we were dealing with over a period of time. But now this is a new, highly infectious strain. We do not want to see this getting out into the community, and that's why we have taken these precautionary steps today in the interests of the public safety of those guests at the hotel and the ones that have been released. So, look, I'll hand it over to Dr Young to go into a little bit more detail, but I thank everyone for their patience and understanding. But once again, Queenslanders, if you have any symptoms, please go out and get tested. And for those in the Greater Brisbane region, remember to look at the rules about where and when to wear your masks. Dr Young.
Thank you, Premier. So 2 new cases overnight in Queensland, both in hotel quarantine, and of course we will be urgently doing their whole genome sequence, as we've been doing with everyone who's tested positive in hotel quarantine. And can I please thank the staff who've been involved in Queensland Health in doing genome sequencing. We are clearly leading in that area, and we are getting these results back so quickly. So yesterday at 5 a.m. in the morning, I was told that we had a positive case in a hotel, and I asked for genome sequencing to be done urgently, and that's the result that came through 10:30 last night that was confirmed. So we now have 6 cases that we know are in that cluster. So we have the original gentleman who returned from the UK on the 30th of December. So he has infected his partner, who of course was in the same room with him. That is not surprising. But he also infected a cleaner, and we're still trying to work out how that happened. There was nothing that we have been able to find so far that has linked that man with the cleaner. So the cleaner became infected and then has infected her partner. Again, not surprising. But the surprising thing now is that the gentleman and his daughter, who I notified you of yesterday, and we did that urgent genome sequencing yesterday, has clustered with the UK man. So those 6 have essentially the same genome sequence. So we know they are linked, but we don't know how they're linked in terms of spread from one person to the next. We just know that in some way it has happened, which is why I've advised the Premier this morning that I think the safest thing to do is to move all of the guests out of that hotel to other hotels immediately. So that has now started and will happen today. So all of those 129 remaining people in that hotel will move, will get tested and will stay in quarantine for 14 days unless we find out what the link is. So far it's floor 7. So we're going to be very, very careful about floor 7, of course, and see whether that's where it's spread, and the rest of the hotel is fine, but we don't know, so we're taking a really cautious approach, as we always do here in Queensland. Then, given that the earliest there could have been any spread from that gentleman from the UK is when he arrived into Australia, into Brisbane, on the 30th of December, we're using that as our point going back to. So anyone who's been in that hotel since that time, the 30th of December onwards, whether they be staff, ADF, police or health or any of the guests and the maritime services workers, maritime workers, we're asking that all of those people immediately get tested and go into quarantine for 14 days from when they left the hotel. So we're now, and we've started that work this morning already, we are ringing up all of those people wherever they are in Queensland, all throughout the country, and we're asking the National Incident Room to work with anyone who's gone overseas, and Maritime Safety Queensland is working with any maritime staff who've now gone on vessels and left Australia. So we're going to do a very broad process to just go ahead with all those people. This is what contact tracing is about, and we have the best contact details ever, of course, for this hotel. They have been fantastic. They have all these details, so we've immediately worked through the night to sort all that and have that process start first thing this morning. So it's in place. So we need to just find all those people and test them. Now, I want to thank Queenslanders because over the last few days you've come forward and got tested. So that is comforting in terms of that I suspect there aren't any chains of transmission happening out of there in the community somewhere in Queensland because one of those workers has gone back somewhere. But what we need to do more, because I always want more, so fantastic result today, but today, please, anyone in Queensland with any symptoms at all, please immediately come forward and get tested. Now, I also want to go through the venue list of people I want to come forward and get tested even if they don't have symptoms. So that is so important. We're now up to, and I thank every one of these people, we're up to 406 close contacts of the cleaner and her partner, and 310 have already had their results back. One of those, the partner of course, is positive. All the rest are negative. So that is fantastic. They of course need to have the full 14 days quarantine. So that is excellent. But I ask again, and I'm going to go through these, and of course it's up on our website and we've sent out public health alerts, but it's really important. So anyone at Woolworths, Cullen Vale North between 11 a.m. and midday on the 3rd of January. Anyone at Coles Sunnybank Hills Shopping Town between 7:30 and 8 a.m. on the 5th of January. Anyone at the Nextra Sunnybank Hills newsagent between 8 and 8:15 a.m. on the 5th of January. Then I would ask anyone, and people have already come forward, thank you very much, who has been at the Bunnings Warehouse, Acacia Ridge, between 2 and 2:40 p.m. on the 5th of January. Anyone who's been at the Sunnybank Cellars, Hellawell Road, Sunnybank Hills, between 2:05 and 2:15 p.m. on the 6th of January. And anyone who's been in that Hotel Grand Chancellor from the 30th of January onwards. So those sites are critical. It doesn't matter whether you've got symptoms or not, please come forward. You need to be tested. If you're not sure what you need to do, ring 13 Health. You can ring them 24/7. Then I would also ask the people in Mullaney who've been fantastic coming forward to get tested. Capriccio's Italian Pizza Restaurant between 6:30 and 7 on the 6th of January. Purple Palette Cellars between 4:15 and 4:25 on the 7th of January. And Woolworths Supermarket in Mullaney between 4:30 and 4:50 on the 7th of January. So I'd ask all of those people also to come forward whether or not they've got symptoms. The rest of Queensland, please come forward if you've got any symptom, no matter how mild. That is really important. So, as always, we can find the first case in a cluster, as has happened with this current cluster, the cleaner, who was superb. If we could find the first case, that's critical. If you don't have symptoms, you don't need to come forward at this stage unless a public health alert goes out. And I remind people who've come from Victoria, you only need to come forward to be tested if you've got symptoms. You don't need to come forward and get tested without symptoms, as was occurring till yesterday. Thank you.
Leave that conference there, and as the news is that it is good news that they have been able to contact trace those many contacts, and that's what the contact tracing is all about, as the Chief Health Officer said there. Well, right now, moving on, let's go to some other news, and of course, when the Prime Minister is away on leave, the acting Prime Minister comes in, and of course there's all sorts of things that are happening. You've all heard about the remarks that he made in his comparison about the Black Lives Matters protest to the riots that took place at Capitol Hill. So Chris Bowen, slams him for what he did, and he says that he should apologise.
The acting Prime Minister has compared the insurrection, the violence in the capital, to the Black Lives Matters protest today and yesterday. Michael McCormack might speak for the government, he does not speak for Australians. Those people around the world who engaged in peaceful protest in the Black Lives Matters movement deserve better than to have their acting leader, their acting Prime Minister, compare them to the violence and thuggery we saw at the US Capitol last week. Australians of colour deserve to know their government thinks more of them than that, and to have the acting Prime Minister spout the words "all lives matter" to diminish the Black Lives Matter movement was beyond disgusting. Michael McCormack has a chance to fix this. He can come out and say on both measures he was wrong. He can condemn the medical disinformation and conspiracy theories of his colleague Craig Kelly. He can accept that the Black Lives Matter movement was legitimate and peaceful protest, not the violent attempt at insurrection we saw in the US last week. What we saw in the US last week was incited by the President, it was violence, and it was an attempt to undermine democracy, and we should just be honest about that. It had nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter movement. This is a man who last year incorrectly claimed that Black Lives Matter protests had been a super-spreading event, without a shred of evidence and incorrectly. So Michael McCormack has form here, but he should look himself in the mirror, realise that he is meant to be speaking for all Australians as acting Prime Minister, and his comments today are beyond a joke. They're quite disgusting.
So that's there for the comments there from Chris Bowen, and of course he's asking for Michael McCormack to come forward and apologise. Will he or not? Let's hear from the man himself.
All lives matter. People shouldn't have to go to a protest and lose their life. Now, I'm not going to apologise because I said that that violence in any form should not happen from a protest. And irrespective of what the agenda of that protest was. The fact is there was violence, there was destruction, there was uninsured property that business owners then have to dig deep into their own pockets to rebuild, and then of course there's lives lost.
So there you go. He's not going to apologize, as he mentioned that he holds his point of view there. Right now, let's get a update from one of our sponsors.
Globenet Realty. Globenet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Usha Chandra, Director of Globenet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetrealty.com.au. Globenet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. Globenet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world, as mentioned. Well, right now, we'll catch up with some of the other news that's happening. Well, it's now good that Tom Comer, has a Indigenous voice in Parliament.
The 2017 Uluru Statement from the Heart was seen as a game changer for Indigenous Australians. Over 250 delegates united and co-signed the document, calling for sovereignty, constitutional reform, a truth-telling process and a voice to Parliament. After a number of hurdles, an interim report into what a voice could look like has finally been released in response to the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Recognition. It outlines a range of proposals on how a voice to Parliament could work and encourages feedback from Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. But some critics argue it doesn't go far enough, and they're disappointed by the body's lack of powers and the fact it won't be part of the Constitution. Tom Calmer, good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Stan, and good to be here.
Look, I want to go first of all to this co-design process and the interim report. 3 years now since the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and it's fair to say, isn't it, that this report, its model, is less than what was asked for with Uluru. Should people be disappointed with that?
Well, I think if people understand that this is the co-design process for a voice to Parliament is not a response to the Uluru Statement, but in fact a response to the Parliamentary Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Reform. That was co-chaired by Senator Pat Dodson and Julia Lesser.
But Tom, can I just come in there, though? It is fair to say, though, isn't it, that this wouldn't have happened if Uluru had not been rejected, and that there was an expectation in the community that what the Uluru Statement was asking for, particularly a voice enshrined in the Constitution, was the benchmark. This is what people wanted. By that measure, this is less than that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you look at the Joint Select Committee and their report, and what they talked about there was that, the first recommendation was that there should be established a co-design process with government and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to come up with a model of what a voice might look like and how it might operate, and then it's up, once the Parliament receives our report, or the government receives our report, they will then consider what form it'll take. Now, there's already been some discussion about taking a legislative form in the first instance to make sure that it gets established, and then at a future time, it hasn't been, dismissed that we might get a referendum to consider it in the Constitution.
So is that what you're looking for here? You want this enshrined in the Constitution? Is that your aim?
Well, in the long term, I think the aspiration of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the nation recognise that is one form of getting a voice.
We know that's been rejected in the past.
Well,
we know that the previous Turnbull government rejected the Uluru Statement because it didn't accept the idea of constitutionally being enshrined. Now, what's changed?
I suppose the Prime Minister's changed, and we now have Minister Ken Wyatt, an Indigenous person who's a Minister for Indigenous Australians. So, you know, that may change. We've also seen a change in the Parliament of quite a number of politicians who were actively opposed to constitutional enshrinement. So yeah, look, you know, I think for our purposes, for the senior advisory group and the co-design groups, we had a mandate, we had a brief, I should say, and that was to establish some models to present to government to consider, and that's the task we had, and we've done it, and it's up to government then, and to work it through Parliament to look at what form it might take into the future.
Tom, let's look at some of the criticism that we've seen immediately to this interim report, and that is that this voice to government will not mean that the government is mandated to consult. It will only be obliged to consult. It doesn't have any veto power. It doesn't have any administrative power. It won't be controlling any funding. It is far less, isn't it, than what Aboriginal people had with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission 30 years ago. Are they valid criticisms?
I wouldn't think so. I think, you know, when we're talking about ATSIC, they had a responsibility to provide advice to government as well. In my understanding of it, they didn't have any veto rights.
But they did have administrative rights. They had a budget. They were able to administer programs. This is not what this is calling for.
Oh yeah, no, definitely won't be administering programs. We made that pretty clear actually in the consultations, and we must remember that the consultations for the National Congress of Australia's First Peoples was far more comprehensive than the Uluru Convention by way of consultations. What we're endeavouring to do here through the voice is to get an opportunity where we could create over time a relationship with government and with Parliament, so that you know, in the construct of any sort of policies and programs that impact on us, and particularly legislation, that our voices are heard, so that, you know, at the end of the day, we as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people will be able to you know, be active participants in our own future, instead of being passive recipients of government policies and programs, as has happened too much into the past.
Tom Calma, good to have you on the program. Thank you again.
An excellent, excellent interview there by Stan Grant, whom I've met, and of course we've always met Professor Tom Calma as well. Great respect for both. But right now, on the finishing note, Lohri. It is that time of the year once again where we celebrate Lohri. Well, it is quite different when you're on the other side of the world, where it is summer rather than winter, because in India it is traditionally a winter's festival where people gather around a bonfire, and the complete atmosphere changes when it is on the other side of the world and you are in this extreme heat.
Happy Lohri friends! Have you heard the traditional song of Lohri, Sundar Mundriye? Come, let's sing it together and learn the meaning of this song.
Sundar Mundriye hoy, tera kaun vitara hoy, dulla patti wala hoy, dulle ne dhi vyai hoy, ter shakkar pai hoy, kudi da lal pataka hoy, kudi da salu pata hoy, salu kaun samete hoy, chacha churi kutte hoy, ਜ਼ਿਮੀਦਾਰੀ ਲੁੱਟੇ ਹੋਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਮੀਦਾਰ ਸਦਾਈਏ ਹੋਏ ਇੱਕ ਭੋਲਾ ਰਹਿ ਗਿਆ ਸਿਪਾਹੀ ਫੜ ਕੇ ਲੈ ਗਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਭੋਲਾ ਰਹਿ ਗਿਆ ਸਿਪਾਹੀ ਫੜ ਕੇ ਲੈ ਗਿਆ ਸਿਪਾਹੀ ਨੇ ਮਾਰੀ ਇੱਟ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਰੋ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਪਿੱਟ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੇ ਲੋੜੀ ਤੇਰੀ ਜੀਵੇ ਲੋੜੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੇ ਲੋੜੀ ਤੇਰੀ ਜੀਵੇ ਲੋੜੀ
अगर आपने अभी तक हमारा चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, wishing everyone a very happy Lodi. And of course, there's Bogi, the Makar Sankranti, and quite a lot of festivals happening around this time. Wishing everyone all the very best for that festive season as we lead into 2021. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all for today from this segment. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. It's good to see you. It's always so good to have you on the show. And thank you for everyone for joining in. And I must mention Devika Maharaj once again. Your untiring support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Well, right now, it's time to say goodbye. Until tomorrow, remain safe and be good.